Hey guys, it's Adam here, and I'm in Los Angeles right now for E3, and I just watched the Microsoft conference. I was not actually able to attend the Microsoft conference, but I wanted to give my quick thoughts on it. Now I don't have the benefit of editing here, so I'm basically just shooting this on my phone. I just wrote down basically what happened, and I'll just give some notes. So I apologize. Like I said, I haven't had time to really digest any of this, but I know a lot of you guys wanted to see it, and because I was here, I thought it'd be kind of cool to do this, but I can't do it at home as I usually would. So here we go. First up, they talked a lot about the Xbox, what was once formerly known as Xbox Scorpio, is now referred to as Xbox One X. That's the official title, which frankly I'm okay with. Xbox Scorpio as a name was obviously a project title. I've never liked the name Xbox One. I always thought that was a really bad title. But Xbox, if you have to live with that, Xbox One X is not bad. So that's cool. They would talk a lot more about the techs and the specs of all of it and everything, and it's high grade, looks pretty solid. So let's move on. They did say that the console will be coming out on November 7th, so definitely this year and pretty soon. At the end of the show, they announced the price, so I guess to be consistent, I will do it at the end of this video as well. So let's talk about some other things. Now, one thing they said that it would do is that it's going to boost pre-existing Xbox One games. Now, they didn't really specify exactly what they meant. They even said, but they did say that if you have like a 1080p television, which is the case for me, I don't actually own a 4K TV, you will still have benefits of playing an Xbox One game on a Xbox One X. It will still be enhanced, and you'll notice it even on a standard definition, but a high definition 1080p television. So basically, it's going to do kind of like what the PS2 did with PS1 games to some extent. You know, it's just going to boost them in a lot of ways, even though it's still part of the Xbox One family. We're in a weird generation cycle. Anyway, so that's pretty cool. You're basically the long and the short of that is if you already own a bunch of Xbox One games, they will be better on a Scorpio or Xbox One X. So then they started going through the games. I'm going to try and rattle these off and just give little thoughts here because I want to keep this brief. They did Forza 7, which looks great if you're into racing games and stuff. I'm sure that's going to be awesome. They actually showed a new Porsche there, a Porsche 911 or something like that. I'm not a car guy, but it was cool that they premiered a car, I guess. When I was in Gamescom in Germany a couple years ago, they did a very similar thing, so it's kind of cool. Then they did this trailer for this game that just looked fucking badass, but I had no idea what it was until the end. I was with my buddy, who's out smoking at the moment, but he called it. He was like, "Oh, this is going to be a new Metro game," and I was like, and it totally was. It was a new Metro game. He's like, "This is what I wanted Fallout to be." So that was his assessment, and he might be right. Then they showed Assassin's Creed Origins, which unfortunately was not a very well-kept secret. That was supposed to be the world premiere, like it was supposed to be a surprise, but a lot of evidence of Assassin's Creed Origins had leaked out already. So, yeah, it's official. It's a new Assassin's Creed games that takes place in Egypt. It looked pretty fucking cool. Then there was PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. I'm kind of looking off in my notes in case you're curious. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, which is already a pre-existing game. We've actually done live streams of that game on my other channel, Game Society. That's a pretty fun fucking game. It's going to be exclusive on consoles anyway to the Xbox One brand. I don't know if it's specifically only the Scorpio. Probably they're going to have some sort of Xbox One basic version. Mark my words, though, down the road, there will be games that only exist on Xbox One X. Give it time. But that game in particular, I guess, will be on there, and it looks pretty cool. Like I said, we've played the PC version and stuff, and that shit was fun. So it's cool that that's getting a console release. I'll definitely want to pick that up. Deep... Sometimes I can't read my own handwriting. Deep Rock Galactic. That was like that looked like a weird first-person shooter fused with Minecraft. It was very brief, so we didn't get a whole lot of information, but visually anyway, it looked kind of compelling. State of Decay 2. I never actually got around to playing the first State of Decay, but I remember that game appearing enticing, and this one did as well. So I would want to play the first one through, but yeah, I'm sure that game will be pretty solid. God, my handwriting sucks. Darwin Project. I'm blanking completely. I don't even remember what that was. Sorry. Oh, no. No, wait, no, that wasn't that one. I don't remember what Darwin Project was. Or maybe Darwin Project was... No, that was a different one. So I don't remember what the fuck Darwin Project was. Then they talked a lot about Minecraft and how they're basically going to be uniting all the various platforms of it to be able to cross-platform, so people playing on whatever version can play with people on whatever version. And they're going to have a 4K upgrade to the game soon, so 4K, 4K, 4K. If you want Minecraft in 4K, don't worry, they're working on it. Then they showed Dragon Ball Fighter Z. So it's looked kind of like Dragon Ball Z with the Street Fighter engine. If you like Dragon Ball Z and you like fighting games, that's probably right up your alley. I've never really been an anime guy, so it really does nothing for me. As far as a fighting game goes, probably solid, but, you know, whatever. I'm going to give you a slightly more interesting background. Look at that. Look at that. There's, like, water. People like water. You guys ever see True Lies? I'm in the same hotel that parts of that movie was shot in. This is not relevant to the subject of this video, but it's interesting. In the scene, there's a scene in that movie where Arnold Schwarzenegger's like riding on a horse and he gets in an elevator and he's like, "Can you press the first floor?" or whatever the fuck he says. I've now ridden in that exact same elevator. That's the hotel I'm in. Moving on. Then there was this game called Black Desert, which looked like they described it as an MMORPG, but the footage they showed just kind of showed the landscape and the world with the characters. Didn't really give a sense of the gameplay. Then there was a game I completely forgot to write down the name of. It looked kind of like that old game Flashback, but like a modern version of it, where it was this. I really liked the art style of it. It had like a 3D universe, but all the characters were like 2D, 8-bit, but like three-dimensionally rendered. It was strange looking. I wasn't really sure what the gameplay was, but visually anyway, it was very compelling. Then there was Artful Escape. I don't remember. They did like a few games in a row that looked really cool. Or Artful Escape, I think, was like the music one. There was this guy, again, it was very visually compelling, and he was like running around with a guitar or something. That one looked cool, but again, you don't really know what it is. Code Vein, I kind of remember being this like dark, gothic-y looking game. But I don't remember much else about it. Code Vein was kind of like anime Dark Souls. That's what it was. It was like anime Dark Souls. So that could be good, potentially, if you like those two things. I was never very good at like Dark Souls stuff, and anime does nothing for me, as previously mentioned, so probably won't be my favorite thing, but that said, it could still be a pretty solid game. Then there was Sea of Thieves. Now, we've seen this game before, and I think that game would be good in various contexts. Like, I'm not really a multiplayer guy, but if you are, that's probably going to be pretty good. It definitely had that, you know, Rare sense of humor. Rare's the developer. They have a pretty solid sense of humor, and it definitely had that. That was apparent in the trailer. But I think, honestly, from a show standpoint, they showed a little too much of that game. Then they showed a game called Tacoma, where they didn't really give us much information on what that game is. A lot of it looked like VR, like, characters, like dummies, like incomplete renders. It's hard to describe, inside of a space station. But what the gameplay itself was, I don't know. Then there was Super Lucky's Tale. This game legitimately excited me and pissed me off at the same time. Because when I first saw it, if you go back and watch like the way they presented that game, to me it looked like they had this little character, like this orange character with a tail and stuff. And I was like, oh my god, they're going to do a Conker game. They're going to do a new fucking Conker's Bad Fur Day. I was so excited. And then they showed him and he was like very kid-friendly. And I thought, okay, maybe they're going somewhere with this. He's going to start off, Conker at one point was like a nice innocent little guy, and then he got sucked into some horrible tale that turned him into a drunken asshole. Like, I thought that was where they were going with it. Nope, it's actually just a very kid-friendly looking 3D platformer. Which, I will say, the game itself actually didn't look bad. It was just, I was shocked because I was expecting one thing and got a completely different thing. But as 3D platformers of that type, you haven't really seen those since like the 6th gen. They're not very common anymore. So kind of a nice throwback. So the game itself will probably be pretty decent. But you know, who knows? But either way, that's kind of cool. Then they showed more of Cuphead. Cuphead was a game that premiered a couple of years ago, and it looked fucking awesome as shit. And I actually got to play that game, a build of it, at Gamescom 2015, 2 fucking years ago. The game is difficult. It is really, really fucking hard. But now it's finally, I guess, done, and it has a release date of September of this year. They did say it was available for pre-order, which would imply it's going to have a physical release. I honestly don't know that at the time I'm recording this. When I originally talked to Chris Charla is like number 2 at Xbox, he told me at the time that it was only going to be digital, but he wanted a physical release. And talking to Chris Charla will be very relevant later in this video. Let me get to that. But yeah, so Cuphead's coming. I'm excited. I really want to play that, but it's got to have a physical release or I'm not getting it. It's my policy. Crackdown 3. I never really played the first 2 Crackdowns, to be honest with you. I've heard that Crackdown 1 is amazing and Crackdown 2 was crap. So Crackdown 3 is finally coming. It was kind of a cool, actually, video they had with Terry Crews, of all people, just being the main character. But yeah, that was pretty neat.
So I'm sure that'll be exciting. Then they did this whole thing with ID at Xbox, where it was a bunch of independent titles. So they were just kind of flashing through a bunch of titles, which was how they kept making a big deal about, oh, we got 42 games we're going to show off to you. And a big chunk of those were those indie games. And I'll tell you right now, I won't name any names, but there are some games in there I know firsthand are complete shit. Because there are developers who contact us a lot of indie developers on my other channel who are like, hey, play our game, and we'll give you a code and we check it out, and it's just like, oh, this is fucking dreadful. So I'm not going to say any specific ones, but I know some of those games are fucking shit, like free-to-play garbage. Then they showed a game called Ashen. All I remember thinking about that game was, after it was over, was, is this like a remake of the old Ashen, or is it just they just use the same name? That's all I could really come away with that one from. Then they announced a new Life is Strange. It's called Life is Strange Before the Storm, which is not really a well-kept secret. We knew there was another Life is Strange game coming. We've played some of that on my other channel. It's kind of a game you either absolutely love or absolutely hate. I don't know, but ironically, I'm not sure I qualify in either. I'm kind of like, meh, so whatever. Then they showed Shadow of War, which is the sequel to Shadow of Mordor. I didn't care about that. You were going to hate what I'm about to tell you, but I've never been a big Lord of the Rings guy. I really don't particularly enjoy that franchise. I'm sorry, I just don't. Opinions vary. What can I say? So I never really got into Shadow of Mordor on that basis, and for the same reason, I'm not really into Shadow of War. That said, it was kind of cool that you could play as orcs, I guess. And I will admit, there was a cool cutscene in there where like these two orcs are like yelling at each other, and then one orc just like fucking rips the head off of another one. That actually was fucking cool. And then there was a trailer for Ori and the Will of the Wisps, which is the sequel to Ori and the Blind Forest. Really cool independent game, originally out of, I believe, Austria. Because I think when I was in Austria a couple of years ago, they were making a big deal about, oh, this is an Austrian game, and this is the Austrian bundle, and you can only get this game in Austria, and then later it became a bigger thing. In fact, got a physical release in North America, ironically. So I was surprised, actually, that it was a sequel to Ori. Not because Ori didn't deserve one or whatever, but because they devoted a lot of time to it, and I didn't think Ori was that big of a seller that it would get that much screen time, but apparently it did. Okay, and then the best announcement of the whole night, or the whole day. Because I will admit, up to that point, I was actually starting to get a little bored. I was kind of like, there wasn't much doing much for me, right? And then Phil Spencer comes out, and he starts talking and stuff. And then he says they're announcing OG Xbox backwards compatibility. I was like losing my shit. I was like freaking out. I was so happy. And the reason, I mentioned Chris Charla before, and my Twitter blew up immediately as soon as that announcement happened. Because if you go back and watch my older videos, I'm certainly not taking credit for this because I had nothing to do with it, I'm sure. But I remember asking Chris Charla multiple times, are you doing Xbox backwards compatibility? And he kept always giving me the same answer. He's like, they want to do it, but the team who's doing it is working on 360, and there's just nobody in place to do OG Xbox backwards compatibility. But I've been mentioning it for years in videos. And so if even like 1% of the people who watched that ever tweeted at Microsoft saying like, we want it, then at least there was a ball that got rolling there. And how fucking cool is that? That shit's coming. Now, they didn't really give any details on how it's going to work. They said it will come later this year, at least the beginning of it. I don't know if they're going to roll it out the way they do 360 compatibility, or if they're going to be able to build just one emulator that just runs it across the board, just because of the nature of that console. It's x86, so it shouldn't be that hard for them, but we'll see. They really didn't give much information on that. But the idea that your OG Xbox games will function on there is amazing. And watch eBay now, because OG Xbox, its time of being cheap and worthless is going to come to a close now. So, collectors, get started. The race is on. Then they talked about, at this point I was like too gung-ho to listen to much, so here's unfortunately just kind of a wrap-up of a couple of notes. Phil Spencer mentioned that there's going to be 4K updates available to various pre-existing Xbox One titles. A lot of the Microsoft brand ones will have free updates, like Gears of War 4 was one that he mentioned, one of the Forza games. It'll just be a free patch that's installed. If you buy Xbox One X, you'll have 4K compatibility. But then he showed a bunch of third-party titles. I think like Ghost Recon Wildlands was one of them, and a few others, where he didn't specifically say that they were going to be free, which implies that 4K patches are going to cost money. So we'll see how that plays out. The Xbox One X is going to cost $499 US. Launches on November 7th. Price is not the best, but also not unreasonable. $600 would have been a killer. $500 is at least doable. Obviously, it's not the most attractive package, but I'll tell you this right now. I would wait at least a month after it comes out, because Microsoft has a tendency in December, especially during the Christmas boom, to offer really solid bundles. They may not drop the price, but they may offer you more content with it. They may be like, here's like 8 games that come out or some shit. Maybe not literally 8, but more games. Or they'll do a 450 bundle, or maybe even a 400 bundle. It's hard to say, but don't be surprised if that happens. I'm just saying, I personally will not be getting one right away, but I do want one. And then finally, they had this big premiere for the game Anthem. Anthem was an EA title that was announced at EA's conference, and they basically said, like, we're gonna show a lot more of this at Microsoft's conference, and they did. But I won't lie, I was too fucking excited about OG Xbox, and my phone was blowing up, and everybody's like, Twitter, and like Facebook, everybody's like, Xbox is here, oh my god! So I honestly apologize, it wasn't professional, but I really didn't pay much attention to what was happening at the Anthem thing. I'm sure it's fine, but you should have fucking shown that earlier. That was... You can't announce something after OG Xbox backwards compatibility and have me still be watching and paying much attention. I'm sorry. But anyway, so that was it. That was the Xbox press conference. At one point, I would have given it kind of a meh, but when they did that, congratulations. That's automatically made it fucking awesome. So, looking forward to the Sony conference. I'll do a video on that. I kind of did an EA one at the beginning of my last live stream, if you're curious. I don't know if I'm going to do a Ubisoft one, and I don't know if I'm going to do a Nintendo one. Maybe I'll combine them, because Ubisoft's going to have a show, and Nintendo's going to basically just show one game, so it may not make the most interesting videos. Maybe I'll combine them if I do any at all. It's hard to say. Like, right now, I happen to have time to do this in the hotel, so we'll see. But, yeah, that's my plan. See how well it works out. Anyway, so that's it for this. Thank you guys for watching. Sorry about the weird nature of it. Here's just another shot of part of Los Angeles I'm in. Why not? Anyway, thank you guys. See you later.